All right, welcome back to the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented to you by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. If you sign today, you bet $100, you're going to get $100 at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. State restrictions apply. We're also brought to you by the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Start your engines with Rod and Cody. Get ready to gamble on Daytona 500 this Sunday. All right, we are continuing our rookie draft series. We have a bunch of running backs, a bunch of quarterbacks and receivers already done. If you go to SGPN Fantasy Football, wherever you get your podcast, or you can go to our YouTube channel, check it out. And of course, please like, subscribe. It helps support the show. Also, let you know when our next stuff is going on. We've got some giveaways coming up. Gave a Ken Walker jersey away last week. We've already talked about Bijan Robinson, who is the undisputed #1 running back in this class, but we haven't talked about Roschon Johnson. So this is going to be the Roschon Johnson episode. He is a 4-star recruit. Johnson has a solid freshman year with Texas, over 800 all-purpose yards and 8 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 223 pounds. Obviously, the arrival of Bijan Robinson really put a damper on his his opportunities there. Johnson is Brad's going to talk about his pros and cons, but he's going to need to go to a spot and a location that allows him to use his power, and he's going to be somebody's hammer, whether it's on a committee or on a 2 running back set. So Brad, let's talk about the pros and cons and your player comp.
Yeah, so like you said, Roschon Johnson is one of those bigger guys, right? He's 6'2", 223, and he uses that size, but he actually is a pretty athletic guy as well, right? So his first pro is obviously that 6'2", 223, is that big power back like you talk about. The second pro is all around his patience. He is a guy who has good vision. He's a patient runner. He doesn't explode through a hole, but he presses that line of scrimmage a little bit, and when the hole opens and develops, then he can hit it. He does kind of have that initial acceleration or that initial burst to kind of get through that hole. So he's really nice when it's well blocked. The third pro is going to be his tackle breaking, right? So you'll see a little bit of a kind of catch-22 here, I'll call it, right, with his con of elusiveness, which we'll get to in a second. But when somebody tries to wrap him up, he will just run through it. He's got a very strong lower body, and he's able to break some of those arm tackles and really run with a good amount of toughness and physicality that's pretty consistent on film when you watch him run all 4 years with the Texas Longhorns. So let's move on to your cons. The first one is he is a taller back. He's 6'2", right? We talked about his size being a pro, but that is also a little bit of a con with him because he does have a tendency to run very upright, and you see some ankle, some touch ankle grabs where it'll take him down because he is very susceptible to that because of the balance. So I would not say that his contact balance is great, because sometimes those lower bodied hits do take him to the ground relatively easily. The second con is going to be his lateral agility. Look, he's 6'2", 223. This is a big, big man. And while he is athletic and has a little bit of speed and power to him, he's not a guy that's going to just change directions on a dime and juke defenders out of their shoes or anything like that. He's not putting spin moves on guys, and he's not doing anything LT wise out there, right? This is a strictly power back for an offense. And then his last con is going to be the elusiveness because of that. Like I said, he's a straight line kind of guy. He just wants to go. And he's not going to be able to make guys miss in a hole. I think he's really going to fit a little bit better in a zone blocking scheme where he can just wait for that hole to develop and he can go instead of needing to try to create space for himself or anything like that. So I do think, like we talked about in the summary, he's going to need to be a guy who it's designed for him to hit those holes. You're not going to put him in space and let him work a bunch of magic out there because that's just not his game. My NFL player comp for him is going to be Latavius Murray. Now, some of you may look at that and be like, ooh, man, that's kind of damning. But if you go back to Latavius Murray early in his career with the the Oakland Raiders at the time, he was a very productive back there, a couple 1,000-yard seasons with the Raiders before he moved on to, I think he went to Minnesota after Oakland and then ended up in New Orleans most recently, and then Denver, a little bit of round robin there. But I think Latavius Murray being that tall, powerful, big running back, he did have some hands. And we've seen a little bit of that from Roschon Johnson. You see increases in receptions every year. They're getting a little bit more comfortable with him in that regards. And you got to remember, 14 catches behind Bijan Robinson, that's a pretty good number to have. So I think he does have some pass catching chops that he could be utilized in that way at the next level.
He's a big running back, and there's not a lot of them in this class. And so, like you said before, he takes a little while to accelerate sometimes. So he can't get caught in the backfield. But if, like a lot of these bigger backs, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, like the bigger backs, they can accelerate a little slower. But when they get on top speed, it's really hard to bring them down. And, people got to make business decisions when they got to tackle these guys in open field in December. So, I do think he's going to fit certain scheme. He could be someone that is that bigger back that, backs up a Derrick Henry like Deonta Foreman kind of did over there. Speaking of Texas over there. So I like this pick. There is a swell of fans for him over on the Twitterverse. And so, he definitely, if he played for another team and had the starting gig, I think he would have racked up a lot more production and been higher on people's lists. But because of Bijan Robinson is why he's down. He is a good back, but like I said, he's a bigger back, and some people just, it really depends on what they're shopping for. You could see the draft capital drop, but you saw like Brian Robinson. Not a lot of people are talking about him. He goes to Washington. Next thing you know, he's the lead dog there, and so you could see something like that with Johnson if he goes to the right system.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that had he come out 15 years ago, I feel like would have been a high-profile running back, right? That was just
Darren McFadden.
Yes, just a big dude, right? And now it's just a totally different game at the running back position. So,
well, again, thank you guys for checking out this episode. Check out all of our episodes on SGPN Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Again, please like, subscribe. It helps support the show. And as always, good luck.